Jonathan, it's a pleasure to welcome you.
Thank you.
You are the CIO of a very important town in Silicon Valley, Palo Alto.
We like to think so.
Lately, there has been a focus on GovTech,
Yes.
smart cities, and how government should be more cued into the evolution of technology. And you sit right at the heart of Silicon Valley, a stone's throw away from Stanford. So important to learn from you. How do we get the government more engaging? Because what is happening is technology and people are surpassing governments much faster, and government is playing the catch-up game.
Yes. Well, I think you make some very good points. I mean, there are big challenges in government. Well, I should say challenges in cities, right? If you think about, the constraints of our transportation systems, and living and working in Silicon Valley, I can tell you that it's hard to find a parking space. It's hard to just drive a few miles because of the congestion. You look at something like climate change. If we're going to solve it, and we have to solve it, it's going to happen in cities, right? You look at something like energy, right? We want abundant, clean, low-cost energy in a world that's growing, in cities that are, in the world, cities are increasing by about 3 million people per week. And this is significant in terms of the needs. And so what can we do? What can we bring to bear on solving these challenges and lots more? And technology has to be part of it. And so why aren't we seeing sort of the significant amount of innovation in the public sector? Look, there's plenty in the private sector, and Silicon Valley is the very personification of that. Part of the reason is that the incentives are good, right? If you build a great product in Silicon Valley, you can hire a lot of people, you can make a ton of money, you can make shareholders very happy. Different set of incentives in the public sector. It's difficult to sell to government today, and the procurement is difficult. So I think we know what the problems are. Now, inside your question is, well, okay, we know what the problems are. What are we going to do about it? It's going to take some time. It's going to take possibly a new generation of leaders who are internet native. They have only been alive in a world where the internet and connectivity is how we live and play and work. So we'll need new blood, new leaders who believe in this, who see this as the solution. And that transition will take time. We also need to see more innovators step up and figure out ways to build business models that where they can profit, but they can also do social good, and they can be successful in a city or government context. Again, we're seeing some really good possibilities there. Right? For the first time, there are VC funds for GovTech, and it's 2017, and we're just seeing that. Now, you could be pessimistic about that, or I choose to be an optimist. That's a good sign. So things are starting to change. And I think finally, to what degree can cities partner in ways they haven't partnered before? We talk about partnerships a lot, but it's time to really execute on them. Government is, as I use often an expression I stole from others, which is we think of government as, you pay taxes, so it's like a vending machine. You put $1 into a machine and you get $1 back in services. Well, everyone knows that's not the case, right? And government can't be the solution to all cities' problems. And so we need more participants, we need new partners. So I think what's going to happen over time is more of the solutions will come from the private sector, with government being a convener, a facilitator, a coordinator of sorts. So there's work to be done. I like where we're trending right now. Things are more positive than they've ever been, but there's a lot of work to do.
Okay. When talk about partnerships, there are a lot of good emerging technology companies around your city and in your city. Smart cities is also smart infrastructure. And let's take the parking example. It's a big problem for us in the Bay Area here. And a lot of very smart companies come up with very good solutions. What is the a better way to have good adaptability of these technologies, because you guys are the first customers for these solutions.
Yeah, we try to think of ourselves really as sort of a city as a platform where you can come in as an innovator and experiment at city scale. Right? It's very difficult if you're a startup or a tech company and you're trying to break into the urban innovation marketplace, and you don't have any sort of track record, or you've got to have a city or a few cities that collaborate with you and say, hey, you know what, we'll take a risk, we'll try some stuff. In a lot of these areas, you pointed out, for example, more innovation around how you can easily find a parking space, how we can more efficiently manage the flow of traffic in an urban environment. We're still in the experimentation phase. Now, a startup or a tech company watching this will say, well, we have a solution, right? That's good news. But I think no one would disagree that we don't have broad adoption, we don't have agreement on how we should be approaching these issues. But we got to still innovate aggressively. And I think that's where we'll see the opportunity, is where cities are prepared to take a risk and say, this might not work, but we'll try it in this particular area, in this parking lot, on this street. We'll collect some results. We'll feed those results back to the vendor. Let's do this as sort of a co-creation, right, a collaboration of sorts. And I think that's where that's what we do, where we found good results. In some ways we're massively innovative, in other ways we're very conservative in that we also go through the normal procurement process, and we can be conservative in some areas. But if you can strike a balance, at least do some proportion of experimentation with the mainstream big stuff, you can learn from. We can learn from that. The companies can learn from that. Communities can learn from that, and that's some first steps, I think.
Okay. Finally, then, the so-called government paralysis. Government is accountable. They have to be very conscientious of how they spend.
Yes.
But they're not more accountable than a startup or a big company. Mm-hmm. So where do you think are the flaws that need to be tightened up?
Well, one of the privileges I have is to visit with a lot of different types of cities and governments, and I see a lot of good news. I do see that you meet a lot of mayors and city managers now and city administrators who they're ready to think differently. Now they have to deal with the realities of their communities, and always a lot of different priorities. Some of them are very basic, but I see a new kind of ambition to embrace technology, first of all, a much better recognition of the limitations that government has, the bureaucracy that exists, the absence of a lot of efficiencies, the absence of some of the right kind of incentives for change. So that's a good news story. The more we have those types of leaders, excuse me, the more we have those types of leaders, the more we can expect some very positive change. It's going to take some time, but we can expect some change. I think in those communities and areas where we still see too much bureaucracy, I think there's a couple of things we can think of. One is, a leader is only as good as the next election. So I really do believe in democracy. If you're not satisfied with your local government, vote, turn up and vote. I think that's a good instrument you have. I think there's more space for the private sector to participate. Again, not relying on government to provide all the solutions, but for the private sector to step up. Today in our session, I talked about a vendor called Nextdoor, or a product called Nextdoor. It's a social network for neighborhoods. Many communities now in the United States use this product. And it wasn't built by any city. It wasn't funded by any city or any government. And yet, it's highly successful, has wide adoption, and they found a business model that works. If cities had been tasked with building social networks, online social networks, we would have faced the bureaucracy you talked about, the paralysis. It would have taken years to write the requirements, to spin up an RFP, to find the funding. That's assuming all those things happened. And yet the private sector stepped up in absence of all that and made things happen. And so, as you can tell, from my perspective, in our city, we see these issues as multidimensional. And we kind of need to get it right across the board, including being open to even the things we can't think of right now. What are the approaches and innovations that are going to be with us 5 years, 10 years from now? Who's going to be the players to really change the game? And to me, that's kind of exciting because we when it happens and when someone steps up, it'll be sort of, we should have thought of that before, but it will happen.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. Really cool.